Welcome to the village. Hello. Hi, Dr. Rodriguez.
Hi, Dr. Madney. Thank you for having me on today.
Yeah, thank you for coming on again. There was a very unfortunate incident with our first recording.
I remember.
Somehow deleted your entire episode or something
well,
happened.
that's okay.
But we're back again here in your sweet home.
Yes, thank you for joining me and thank you for having me on today. Looking forward to our discussion.
So am I. It's an important topic that I've been wanting to address with another female in the professional world, and I think it's cool because you're in a different kind of profession.
Yeah.
I have Dr. Sheri Rodriguez, EDD, Director of Academics and Outreach.
Yes.
And I am Dr. Mavash Madney, MD. I am a spokesperson for the American Academy of Pediatrics as of...
It's amazing. As a childhood friend of yours, I'm so proud of everything you've accomplished.
And I am of you, too.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sheri just mentioned we know each other from New Kids on the Block days.
So like elementary school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were always the intellects.
I think that's a fair, label. We always just enjoyed academics and we enjoyed reading and just learning. I think that's kind of where our space was. Yeah.
Yeah, we did. We had many projects together in English and chemistry and all sorts of reading and learning, like you said. And to each their own. That's what we enjoy and that's what we continue to do. We're both in fields that require lifelong learning and reading, and we can talk about our journeys a little bit.
Yeah, that sounds great.
High school, we did our best, and you excelled in English. You were the only one who got an A out of Miss Assamonde in 11th grade. English class. You were the only one.
I don't know if your listeners are going to have any idea what that means, but...
What?
I don't know if your listeners are going to have any idea what that means.
I think everyone can relate on some level to something,
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, I'm, that's really flattering coming from you. I know you've accomplished so much, and I always admired you and your drive and your ambition. And just to give kind of a broad overview of my journey and how things unfolded for me was I went to college, changed majors a couple times, like any other. I feel like that's a typical part of the student experience.
Are you okay saying where you went to college?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I went to Rutgers University, Camden campus. And my original intent was journalism. That was what I was really interested in, writing from the journalistic approach, that kind of thing. So several twists and turns, I ended up as a psychology major. Again, I feel like many students kind of struggle with major changes and things like that. So, yeah. Graduated college and started working for this organization that I was interning for my senior year of college, which supported children who were on the autism spectrum. They call it autism spectrum disorder, ASD, and working in the classrooms with them, home therapy, things like that. And I did that for a couple of years and just realized it wasn't for me. I wanted to do something different. I wasn't quite sure what. So I started looking at graduate school options because I felt like as a psychology major, that was the next natural step. So looking at graduate programs.
Why was it the next natural step? I'm just trying to get your thoughts as you're going through for kids and their parents who are listening who may not know or understand why.
Yeah. So no, that's a great point. So for me, and this is just my perspective, everyone's perspective is different, right? So for me, I knew if I wanted to pivot in my career and what I was doing, I needed a graduate degree. I know there's some majors where students can easily pivot with other degrees, but for me, I felt like as a psych major, I needed something else. I needed to somehow move on to the next step. In order for me to do that, a graduate degree was necessary.
Okay.
Because even in working in K-12 at that time, I didn't have a teacher certification. So even to move around, even in that field, I would have needed something else. But I didn't want to stay in K-12. I wanted to shift to something else. So I knew for me, again, just for me personally, I wanted a graduate degree that would help me move into another field. So higher ed was something I kind of fell into. There was a master's in higher education administration program that I was really interested in, and I started that program, and I really enjoyed working in higher ed. I enjoyed being a graduate assistant. I knew as soon as I started the program, I said, yes, this is the career path for me. and I was really excited. So finished my graduate program and then started working in higher ed over the years in different, I'm not going to get into every single position, but just broad overview, different capacities. I was an academic advisor. I worked in administrative admissions for a while. I was an associate director of advising, and then eventually I got my doctorate, my EDD, in educational leadership. And for listeners who may not know, that's the same degree that Dr. Jill Biden has.
Yeah.
So it's different from a PhD. Just to give a little bit of background, it's different from a PhD in that it's more practitioner based. There is certainly an element of scholarship there. I wrote a dissertation. I've done publications. I've done all the pieces that are part of a PhD experience, but I did it more from a practitioner lens. So PhDs are typically very discipline focused, very academic focused, whereas this was a little more broader in the sense that there was a practical application to it. So I finished that program, and I knew I was ready for a different experience, but still in higher education. So I got a position at another institution in an assistant dean role. So that role was really aligned with my academic advising experience in that I worked closely with college students and helping them navigate any issues that they had, graduation clearance, general advising, general support, just kind of being that overall student support and student services for the College of Arts and Sciences at that particular university. So I was there for a couple of years and just really came to the conclusion at that point that I was ready to shift from working with students to being more involved in the academic and program development side. So series of personal professional events led me to and obtain an associate director position in the Office of Graduate Studies. So that was very graduate student focused. No interaction with students, but we did a lot of things that supported students, like in terms of program development and things like that. So that role has since morphed into a director role. So now I'm director of academics and outreach, and I help with program development and curriculum across all programs within the university. We have some level involvement with a lot of those programs that are new, that are innovative, that might have a different mode of delivery, like online, off-site, things like that. So our team is very involved with helping to develop those programs and getting them through the development process so then they can launch and be actual academic programs. So it was a journey I never thought. And, this is one of those things where, like, students and young people aren't told that there's positions like mine.
Yeah.
Out in the world. Right. I feel like we're only exposed to a very small percentage of positions like that you can see, right? Like doctors, exactly. Teachers, right. Lawyers, things like that. But there is, depending on the industry, there's this whole other area that does the work that supports the operations. And that's where my position is. So again, it's not a position that I would have envisioned for myself because I didn't know it existed.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a really good point that you made, that we're not, when you ask a kid, even if they say they want to be something very specific that they've heard of, it's like, oh, where'd you find that from? Mm-hmm. You expect them to say something like, astronaut or
right, exactly.
Teacher. But these
or if they're thinking of higher education, they would probably say a professor.
Yeah.
Not realizing there's this whole other side, administrative side, that supports the university. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say even in healthcare, there's a lot of administration that runs, like, the higher operations of things. Because if you go to a hospital, like, the doctors or nurses are clinical, but you also have administrative. So to think about different skills that you're good at. So what skills do you think that kind of pushed you towards this?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would say organizational skills, things like administrative skills, knowing how to keep myself on track with different things, and also leading a team to help them stay on track. Also writing, that I love to write. Mm-hmm. So helping with pieces of curriculum, and even something simple from writing an email to writing a proposal, to a publication. Those involve writing at different varying levels and degrees. I would say interaction, professionalism, interacting with people, respect, communication, being able to communicate openly, frequently, understanding the politics of an organization, being able to navigate that, and just, I would say, overall understanding the field of higher ed, appreciating it, knowing what direction things are moving in, being able to have that sort of foresight and things.
No, that's great. Yeah. It sounds like you're taking all of your best skills and things that you're good at and enjoy. Because it is important to enjoy it, because you come to a point in your life where going to work every day is such a big part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't enjoy it, it kind of makes your whole life a little bit in a
Right.
blah state, if not worse,
Right,
right?
right. And I agree. And like it's hard because people's interests can change, right?
Yeah.
And industries change. So just knowing that that can happen and being prepared for that and, kind of continuing to develop other skills in the event that you may need to change careers or may need to, or another door might open for you, and then you're prepared for that. And I think that's important as a woman too, kind of being able to have that foresight, because I think a lot of us have been exposed to men and I mean, I'm not saying this is for every man that this happens, but we see them get promotions, or additional responsibilities, or these sort of honors and acknowledgments, and we start to wonder within ourselves, like, what can I do to be acknowledged equally to get that promotion? So I think it's important to think about other skills that you can obtain along the way.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right. This is, like, as women, we've made a lot of strides in equality and professional opportunities. But really pushing back past barriers that are obvious and some that are not so obvious. There's barriers within society that just seem to exist still for women, whether we want to face it or not. They're just kind of invisible fences that are there.
And there's barriers across industries too still.
Yeah.
Certain fields might have limitations for women, or women might have to work harder to navigate those fields, for promotions and to move up. So
yeah. Do you have examples of struggles, or do you want me to talk about my journey first?
Yeah,
then we'll talk about struggles.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, as a woman, like they say, when you've made it to a certain point, turn around and reach below, because you were that person before.
Definitely.
So just no matter who it is, but we're trying to make that push for women. I'm a pediatrician. In my office, it still strikes me when I see these young girls. Some of them are very, driven. They're doing very well academically and in their school with extracurriculars. Is when you ask them what they want to do with their lives or for a living one day, and some of them say they wish they could do this, that, or the other, but they're going to settle for whatever, whether it be the family they're growing up in, or they think about money already, or they think that it's too hard or it's too much work. And you and I can both sit here and attest to the fact that anything and everything is a lot of work if you want to get to where you want to be.
It definitely is, yeah.
And before you know it, that piece of college and then master's or medical school or whatever you're getting passes by so fast.
It does.
In a blink of an eye, all that work you put in, it's worth it at the end. I guess my journey, like, yes, I was, that type A kid in high school. You knew me to be just always had my eye on just getting good grades for what purpose eventually I didn't know yet. I played with different ideas. I liked biology class. I liked chemistry. I thought about biotech, and I thought about professor or teaching. I thought about medicine, but I wasn't quite sure. I thought about pediatrician when I was 9, got rid of the idea, and then came back to it. So then, I went to Rutgers, also New Brunswick campus. I changed my major. I rethought my major. I started with biology. I wasn't pre-medical. I started with biology maybe for like the first semester, maybe because my sister had done it.
Right.
And then I changed to chemistry when I realized that it actually was like a mathematical science, which I enjoyed and was good at. When it came down to it, I did not enjoy chemistry in the long run. It was a little too 3D for me. But then I started to think about medicine in terms of enjoying women's health a lot. I actually, shout out to Oprah Winfrey. I had watched an episode of Oprah. She had guests just talking about, that back in the day they used to dress pregnant women up as like little dolls themselves. And so she was talking about maternity fashion. I always liked fashion. I thought that was interesting and cool. And I liked the idea of women's health. So then I went back to the idea of pre-medical and maybe do obstetrics and gynecology. So that was my eye and my thought. And did end up like taking a couple years off to prepare a good pre-medical resume or application. Went to St. George's University for medical school. And during my clinical rotations, it's very different to have the theory of a topic, but to actually do like the clinical work is very different. And women's health in clinical aspect wasn't for me. There's a lot of surgery and there's a lot of complications that I didn't enjoy as much. It felt more of a chore, but I had my pediatrics clinical right after I had my OBGYN clinical, and it like came to me. I didn't even have to make an effort. It just naturally was me. I liked the educational aspect, preventative medicine. You can prevent so much more for children. By the time you're an adult, it's harder to prevent things and people are more stuck in their ways, but you can work with parents, families. I felt like you could make a really big impact because you will always want a doctor for your child. Like you may not want to go to one yourself, but I felt like I could make an impact, make a difference in people's health for the long term. And you get to see so many different things. I saw an asthmatic one day, a kid with a broken bone the next day, a kid with this panhypopituitarism. So they had all of their higher functioning hormones were like low, so it affected every part of their body, and it was just interesting to me. So I saw so much and I thought it was cool, and I also thought it was just interesting, and I just had the pediatric personality. All the other pediatricians when I was a medical student said, well, you're one of us, you're definitely one of us, So I was able to get letters of recommendation and apply, and went to residency at Westchester Medical Center and the Children's Hospital there. And after that, I worked for a year as a hospitalist in the Children's Hospital, which is all the sick inpatient children. Then, like, life led me to upstate New York, where I have been working at an outpatient community pediatrician. I do some inpatient work and go to newborn deliveries and things, but it's mainly outpatient. It's kind of where life led me, but I actually really enjoy it and see like a perfect fit with me in outpatient pediatrics, because you're a community pediatrician. People know you as one of the pediatricians in the community. You're not just a doctor they saw in the hospital when their kid was sick. You're a doctor who sees them when their child when they're well, when they're first born, when they're first have a complaint. You're the one who may pick up a diagnosis. You're the one that follows them up through everything, social, emotional, medical, everything. So it's nice. You get to see, you get to be like that middle of the night hero, but you also get to be that calming, comfy, like kind of part of the family, pediatrician. That's kind of how that story led to where I am today. And I kind of get to see the social aspect where now I can like have a podcast and talk about everyday thoughts, because we're really the ones part of that village of raising the children. So I see like where I am now and kind of relating to like we're sitting here, we've been talking all weekend about some of these challenges where you reach a point in your career, in your life, whatever. And yes, as a woman, sometimes like for me, it's like I have this sweet voice, persona, everything, but I'm doing the same job that a man in my role is doing. So it's the same exact thing, same exact expectations, but sometimes you sense like a different kind of treatment or respect.
Yeah.
And whether people like talk about those like unconscious biases, things like that, no one's going to really advocate for you better than yourself. So I've had to, and many times, speak up and say, hey, I feel like you're treating me different than this person, and I really demand this. I really need to, well, not demand, but you need to command that respect. So, and it's a little harder because, we tend to, as women, we do multitask. We think or talk about other things at the workplace. So keeping up that professionalism is important for us to remember to do. Sometimes I feel like our dress code is slightly different, like this is a whole nother topic, but really like presenting yourself in a certain way at the workplace, like appearing professional, speaking professionally to kind of command that respect. But I think like as you pointed out earlier today was really like talking up for yourself. Go into that office or that meeting and say, this is what I need. This is what I've brought to the table.
Right.
and this is what I require to continue to be happy at the table, you know?
Right, right.
So, you know, it's a challenge when we're in a economy such that we are. It's affected everybody's lives professionally and personally, but that doesn't mean that you should take the back burner or just shy away from what you feel like you should be doing or should be recognized for.
Exactly, exactly. And I think another layer to that, like you and I were talking about, so there's the female lived experiences, right? Being a woman in
Yeah.
a professional realm. And there's also, and I know we were talking about this earlier, that upbringing that we had. So, me personally, I came from a working class background, very proud of it. You know, what my parents were able to accomplish, and they both had working class jobs. They worked incredibly hard. So, just knowing that, you know, there's the being a woman aspect, and then there's, you know, coming from this background where maybe we didn't necessarily have access to certain resources, not having access to certain resources that kids growing up from other backgrounds, from
Right.
maybe upper income backgrounds, have. And even an example of this has been in my work for my dissertation and how I've been strategically selecting my job. So, as an example, my dissertation focused on community college transfer students. So, I wasn't a community college student myself who transferred from a 2-year to 4-year institution, but I feel like my values aligned with those particular students because a lot of them come from working class backgrounds. They're first generation college students. They're not always aware of certain, they don't know what a bursar's office is, you know,
Right.
things
Yeah.
like that. So I felt like my background was aligned with that particular population, and that drove me to want to serve that population through working with students through academic advising and now through program development and design, and also the community college partnerships our university forges to help support smooth transfer of credits and articulation agreements for these students to give them an easier path. I think that is an example of what you were talking about earlier, you know, giving that hands up to these students, you know, to at least give them an opportunity to transfer somewhere, that there's not going to be those barriers, and that hopefully that won't be in their way, that, you know, they'll be able to transfer to an institution smoothly. You know, I think there is another layer to it because there are challenges associated with both of those identities, right? And those, if those identities overlap, there's going to be more challenges.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's true. I mean, we live in a land of opportunity, it's true, but there's clearly some children who, depending on your background, your upbringing, how you came to be where you are, there's mindsets and there's different influences. Like, I work in a rural community where I see many of these children, like I'd mentioned earlier, who don't think beyond a certain way, even though they have that capacity. And I try to encourage them. I especially if I see a particularly inclined child or like a bright child or someone who thinks outside the box. And I don't like to say intelligent because that's a tricky word, right? Intellect,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, intellect is varied in so many different ways. So I like to look more for that, yeah, just like that brightness, that curiosity, that drive that they would like to go beyond.
Right, right.
But who's gonna show them what direction and try to push them and give them ideas if maybe their parents don't have the ideas? If you think about it, not every parent comes from the same situation that the child will end up in. So we're all responsible to find those children, and when we cross paths with them, try to give them a little light and encouragement and teach them a little something, like whether it's a job or think about college or trade school or whatever it is they want to do.
Exactly, whatever goal it is.
Whatever goal. And I try to push these young girls to just go for the top. Don't let anything stop you. Like a lot of young girls say, well, I want to have kids by the time I'm this age or that age. And that's fine. And there's many, many women that I know and you know who have done it all. Like it is a struggle, but like don't let things stop yourself, and don't think that you're going to have something else to fall back on, because you're your individual self. When you look in the mirror, there's only you looking back at you, right? So you only have you to answer to.
I like that. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And tell yourself, like, what did you do for me? You know?
Right.
It's got to be, you have to prioritize yourself as well. And I don't think it's being selfish. There's a difference. It's being...
Yeah, I don't think it's being selfish, but I think in a way it is putting yourself first because, well, 2 points, you can't drink from an empty cup. We hear that all the time. And I feel like women especially tend to fall into that trap.
Exactly.
Where, you're a wife, you're a mother, you're whatever
daughter,
daughter, community member, whatever organization
sister.
you're million different hats.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you do need to kind of prioritize yourself and your own goals and what you want to be able to be happy, to be successful, and to be successful at what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that's one thing. And you mentioned something earlier, having it all. And I've always asked this, like, what does that mean? And do we need to redefine it? Right?
So,
what does it
actually... That's a good point.
What does it mean when we say that? Because I think women hear that and they're like, oh, it all, like the husband, the kids, the house, the job. That may be your it all, but it might not look like that for someone else.
And rethink it too. Like, is it your all? Or is it the all somebody told you
right.
you had to have?
Right.
Like, really think, like,
there's been this socially constructed belief.
Think about what you want that would make you happy in your life. Really give it some thought.
Right.
And if it changes, we shouldn't be expected to know when we're 18, 22, or even 25.
I think that is so young. I mean, even working in higher ed as long as I have, just thinking about that, the idea that we're expecting these 18-year-olds to declare a major, and it's just, and then you see them change it anyway. And not to say that at the end of the day, you end up with a business degree that you can't end up doing something else because you mature or change down the road. But it is a very high expectation to put on like an 18 or 19-year-old. Like, you need to know exactly what you're going to do.
Right. And don't think that you need to know exactly what you want to do, because you may not, and things will change. Take your time in your life. It's a long one.
Yeah.
Hopefully, like, God willing, it's a long life. And so...
And I've heard, too, because the conversation around careers in general for everyone has changed. And now the approach is, it's not just you ask a child, what do you want to be when you grow up? What 5 things do you see yourself doing when you grow up? Because people are changing careers. It happens all the time. People are finding ways to prepare to pivot, that type of thing. So, just kind of driving the message home that it may not end up, and it probably won't end up being just one career.
Yeah.
It could be a subset of careers within one industry. It could be completely different careers, but the chances of being just one career these days is pretty slim.
No, exactly. And like you said, things do change once you're in it. The details of it change. Like, I never thought to think about outpatient, inpatient, what does all that mean? But, you figure those things out, and different ways to focus on your other talents or other interests. Like, now I realized after I turned 40 that media and communications was of interest to me. That never would have been something I liked as a teenager, because I didn't like to speak.
Right.
And now I can't stop talking. Give yourself that benefit that you may change your personality, your interests, your abilities may change as life goes on. And that's expected. You can't just be one person every decade.
Right.
And you're basically the same person inside.
Fundamentals are there. Yeah,
exactly.
But there's an evolution that goes on.
Right, and it's expected. So what final words would we want to say to, this is for all young kids, but we as empowered females, trying to empower other females, a few tidbits we can maybe put out there.
One thing would be, don't be afraid to ask for what you're worth. I know we were talking about before, having those conversations about asking for resources, asking for more money. It can be hard, but you're not going to know the answer unless you ask.
Exactly.
Just ask the question.
Just ask.
And if you need to do some research to back yourself up in whatever point you're trying to make, you can do some research and pull some statistics and data, and you can say, people in my field are getting paid X in my particular role, and you're paying me this. This is an X number of dollar difference. I'm asking for this much more money. If you need to do some research and pull data to support your points. However you need to do it to support what you're trying to ask, I would say absolutely do it.
Historically, that's been a very well-known drawback for women, and we haven't pushed past it yet.
No, we
I know
haven't.
yes, of course we've made strides, but it's still an issue, and there's many, many layers to this issue that we could get into at another time.
Could do a part 2.
Yes, there's always different parts pending. I want to say, just as a whole, whether you're 12, 22, 52, what's that Martina McBride song? That this one's for the girls song.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
I just want to say, it sounds cliche, but it's so true, but really, listen to the voice within. Take a few minutes to be calm and still each day. Try to ignore what it is that your boss, your aunt, your child, what all of these people want and expect from you. For 5 minutes, think about what you want and how you can really advocate for yourself, love yourself, what you need to do that's going to make you content enough that you'll be a better person for all these other people.
I love that. I love that. And I feel like we can all at least find 5 minutes. I think we can manage that. And I think that's a great goal, even for someone who's looking for a New Year's resolution or something and like that.
It's true. And this is a great, it is New Year's Day 2024 that we're recording. It happens to be because I'm saying it because it's something I've struggled with myself. And I've been told too, but what do you want? I don't know.
Right.
I never thought about it,
Right.
So it's a good way to kind of segue into thinking about that. And again, you don't have to hurt anyone, but please don't hurt yourself in the bargain.
Right. Don't talk down to yourself or say, oh, this isn't for me, or, you don't know that. It could absolutely be for you.
Yeah.
So,
no, until
that's
you
good
try.
advice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was great. Hope if someone at least gets some good tidbits out of this, to help guide themselves. I think it's totally worth it.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.